everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Help for HD TV. Today we have a very special guest on with us. We have Jimmy. Hi, Jimmy. And we have his amazing mom, Deborah Bunting, with us today. And they are going to talk a little bit about an experience that they recently had with COVID-19 and Jimmy. But before we jump into that, Deb, why don't you give us a little bit of background about how HD is in your life and kind of Jimmy's backstory?
Okay. I adopted him when he was 5. And from the moment that I hugged him, he was mine. I gave birth to him at that moment. He was my baby. And they had told me that it was that the biological mother had some kind of an illness, the Huntington's, but back then there was no computers or anything. I didn't really know what it was. And as the years went by, I always in the back of my mind looking and watching and thinking, does he have it? Does he have it? He showed a lot of different signs through his childhood. But then he started to get in some problems with the law, and it wasn't him. And I said, Jimmy, we're going to have to get you tested now, because otherwise you're going to get in trouble one day and I can't help you. But at least if you have Huntington's, we have something to hold on to. I had him tested and they said it was positive, that he definitely had it. And on the way home, he sat quiet and then he just started crying. And the only question he asked was, is it going to be bad when I die? And I just said, Jimmy, you got your whole life to live between now and then. And that's what I always tell him. Yeah, we're all going to die, but you have from here to live. So all in here, enjoy it. That's what you got to do.
You're an amazing mom.
Thank you.
That's for sure. That's
Thank you.
Absolutely true. So, Deb, I know between diagnosis and where we are now with Jimmy, there's obviously a lot more story to that. But more recently, Jimmy got COVID. Can you tell us how you found out, like what symptoms he was experiencing?
My husband he works at the post office. He's at the sorting center, and 30-something people had it. And so we knew inevitably it was going to come home with him, and I would clean everything. Jimmy started acting like he wasn't feeling good. And then my husband one day came home and he said something to him outside, and he goes, yeah, he says, well, I got a fever. And I said, oh, and he came in, took his temperature, and he started getting sicker. And then I was watching Jimmy, and Jimmy was getting worse and worse. He's had the cough, the Huntington's cough. So I wasn't sure whether it was the Huntington's cough or but it started getting worse and more and more. And then he was just looking terrible. We got the test and we came back positive. And at least my husband did. And then we went and had the test. One morning we got up and he was really bad shape. And then he just started choking and coughing and just all this. It was the weirdest thing. He stood up out of the recliner on his own. Now he's not gotten up on his own. He's not stood on his own. He's not in a couple of years. He stood up on his own and he walked 2 or 3 steps to me and grabbed me and held on to me. And I didn't know what was going on. And at this point, he had a rash, a really bad rash. It was like, he almost looked like an alligator. It was like lumps. It was all over him. He was just panicked. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. So I got the pulse ox and I took his pulse ox and I got that. It showed his oxygen level was 98, 99. I said, Jimmy, you're doing good. Okay. So I thought it was just in his mind, but then he started really freaking. I put him in front of the fan. I knew I had to get him to the hospital. I hated that because the hospital here but they changed owners and stuff. But anyway, so I said, all right, let's take him there. So I called the ambulance, took him to the hospital. They told me I was outside. I went in and they said, you're going to have to wait outside. So one of the nurses about an hour later came out and I said, listen, I've got to tell you about my son. He can't communicate. They said, yeah, well, send somebody out. We'll send somebody out. They weren't sending anybody out. So I went back in again. They said, you can't be in here. You can't. So anyway, a nurse came out and she said, you're not even supposed to be on the property because you have COVID. I said, but you don't know anything about my son. My son has Huntington's disease. He can't speak for himself because he's not speaking at all at this point. And I said, I need to talk to somebody to give him the background. She said, okay, we'll call you, and started to walk away. I said, yo, you don't have my phone number. Okay, wait, I'll get something to write it. Wait, let me write it. And she wrote it on something. I said, please tell my son I'm here. I'm outside. I'm waiting for him. I'm going to be here. I'm here. So she said, no, you're not supposed to be on the property. You have to get off the campus. So I stood there and I waited. I was out in the parking lot. I said, I'll stay in my van. My husband will go home. I'll stay in the van. You have questions, anything, I'll sleep here tonight. I don't care. Please, no, you can't be on the campus. So anyway, nobody called until late that night. My sister-in-law and niece, who are nurses, they had contacted me and said, what's going on? And I had told them. And then my niece finally, because I said, I can't get any answers. I don't know what's going on with him. I knew he was still in the ER hours later. My niece said, tell her that I'm going to call there, tell her that I'm allowed to talk to her and get any information. I said, I don't think they're going to do that, but okay. So I did. I called there and I said, look, my niece wants to talk to you. Why does your niece want to talk to you? She doesn't need to talk to us, blah, blah, blah. And I said, she wants to talk to you. She called, she got his stats, and that was it. And I said, but does he know that I'm calling? Does he know anything else? And she said, that's all I can tell you. I said, okay. During the night, 2:30 in the morning, there was a nurse, a nice nurse. She had called and said, Jimmy's trying to say something to me and I can't understand him. I said, thank God somebody called. So I'm saying, Bubba, it's all right. Listen, I'm trying to get it from him and I couldn't understand, because usually to understand him, I have to do a face-to-face, look at him and read him, his eyes, his mouth, everything, to be able to find the word. So I'm trying to get it, and I couldn't understand. He was getting frustrated. He was freaking out. I'm getting upset. So the nurse was very nice, and she's going, no, you can't get up. No, she said, you got to stay in bed. You got to stay in bed. So anyway, she said, I got to go. And she hung up. So here I'm left wondering what's going on with him. She called me back later and said, he's calmed down. He's okay. She says, he wanted to be turned. I said, no, that's not what he was saying. Oh, no, yes, that's what I said. He can turn himself. That's not what he was saying. And then the next morning, anyway, it just went into a whole thing where they weren't willing to really cooperate. I've got to tell you girls, I'm very glad to be able to have this forum, because what I went through, all I kept thinking is everybody with the HD loved one has to know about this, because it was just horrible. It was absolutely horrible. They didn't want to communicate. They didn't want to know anything.